Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to my live feed here tonight. I'm really excited about having my guest on tonight. As you know, I've been studying the area of life after death for many, many years, and I'm speaking with Terri-Ann Russell, and she has an amazing experience of her connection with her son, who is in spirit. We're going to be talking about her book, From Death to Life. The incredible story of Anthony Joseph. Terri, welcome to the show. I'm excited to speak with you tonight.
Hi, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me. It truly is an honor. And today is his first angelversary in heaven. And I wasn't sure how I would be, but I left it up and I surrendered to all that is.
Well, it was interesting because when I first started reading through your story and everything, and going through the questions and and stuff like that, I thought, wow, this is similar to my story. And many people that have been following my show for a long time, they know that my mother transitioned in 2012, and that I've been speaking to her. And it's interesting, your mother still says your full name first, middle, and last name, even in spirit, when she's annoyed with you. So I don't know what I know you mentioned at some point your son gets a little, you could feel a little annoyance from him, but it is very funny that that personality still comes through. So.
Yeah, I think that's what surprised me originally, is because he curses a lot too.
Yes, and you think you're in spirit, you're not supposed to do that. So let's talk a little bit. Let's start with you first, because spirituality is not new for you, and you had started off in this many years ago in healing. Am I correct? From what I'm understanding.
Yes, my daughter was born 10 years ago with an illness similar to what Anthony passed with, and she had 4 intestinal surgeries and over 40 blood transfusions. And traditional medicine failed us. We went through that for about 3 years. And I turned to energy healing to help heal her then, because nobody could help this baby. And every month she was getting a blood transfusion just to keep her alive. So energy healing really shifted and changed my whole life and hers. She's 4 years hospital free now with no blood transfusions. And her doctors are astounded. They're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Energy healing."
Yeah, they don't really understand that, do they?
No, but the proof's in the pudding, I say. She's perfectly healthy and she has not had a blood transfusion. She's had 1 or 2 little dips in her hemoglobin, but I would just go back in and keep reiterating that energy healing with her, and she's been hospital free.
That's wonderful. I love those kind of stories, and especially when it baffles doctors. And
yes.
Not to say that not all doctors aren't open, because there are some that are very, very open, but their training doesn't always allow them to do that.
Right.
So you studied many things along the way. Corona Reiki, Usi Reiki, Theta healing, which you and I share, and quantum healing and stuff like that. And so you found you were able to help your daughter and heal your daughter throughout this. And so, was that a surprise that your son transitioned from the same or similar illness or health issue that you'd healed your daughter from?
It was a surprise, because he was the opposite. He was totally healthy. He was we had just gone away a week in Vegas for his 27th birthday. We spent a week with him. He was perfectly healthy. He never showed any signs of illness or sickness. He was happy. And then about 3 days prior to his passing, I was guided to go up and see him. Again, not knowing why. I was very in the dark about his transition. And I'm sure it had to be that way, because I probably would have smothered him his entire life.
Yeah, I understand that.
So just soon after that, 3 days, he passed suddenly. He had gone to the doctor. They sent him home with a stomach bug diagnosis. And within 4 hours, his roommate was calling 911, and he wasn't able to breathe. And he had, when the paramedics arrived, he was alive, but they couldn't save him at that point.
Oh, wow.
So his spleen had, his was his pancreas, and his pancreas became necrotic and wrapped around his spleen, and his spleen ruptured.
Wow. Wow. So, and then what? How did that transition happen to where were you able to hear him right away after after his transition, or how long of a time were you able to experience hearing him?
So it was in a few hours. He passed at 10 o'clock at night. At 2 o'clock in the morning, my husband and I were woken to an officer at the door, and they were explaining. And you have to understand, this is my child. As much as I am spiritual, I'm still human. And they're explaining how they tried to save him, and they were doing chest compressions, and they're very literal in how they speak. And I sort of left my body at that time already because it was so traumatic for me. And so that was 2 o'clock in the morning. But so I could see him, I could feel him, I could smell him. He was yelling at me at that point. And it was almost like as if there was a glass wall separating us. He was very garbled, but he'd come in and out, and he would be yelling, "I'm okay, Ma, I'm okay." And I was like, I shut it down because I was like, no, I'm not hearing you, because if I'm hearing you, you're dead. And at that point, I was not believing that he was dead yet. There was no way. I had just seen him. It was not possible. I was in total shock and denial.
I think you bring up a really good point there, because it's one of the things that when we practice or study spirituality, we know on a mental level where they're at, and even if we can hear them, we know where they're at. But I think you mentioned, like, that's kind of the first stage of grief, which is denial in a sense. And so I think that sometimes, especially spiritual people, forget that it's okay for your physical mind to grieve and go through that pain. And I think we forget that as well. So
yeah, it's been a hard transition for me to sort of meld the human and the spiritual. I don't think I've even gotten there yet, and I don't know if I ever will, because I fought with him for a long time. Like, I'd say, "I can't believe you're dead," and he'd yell, "I'm not dead."
Excuse me. Well, in his sense, you're not, but for you, you can't give him a hug.
Right.
You can't.
I would say, right. And I said, I would say, then I changed it, and I said, "I can't believe you're not hearing the physical." Like, he couldn't argue with that, could he?
Yeah, and from what I'm understanding, he has a little bit of a sarcasm too.
He does. He's got a mouth on him, and he was very adamant with me about me going through this process and helping me. But it was also a life lesson of mine. He could not intervene. He could help me, because right away I was taken over by the dark. It was very quickly, and because I am who I am, I understood that that wasn't me who was acting out on these things. I mean, I love my son immensely, but I knew suicide would not bring me to my son. I knew that suicide would not guarantee me being with him. So I knew that, who was speaking was not me.
Right. Well, and you were experiencing attacks by entities, am I correct? And then
Yes.
you'd never experienced that because your frequency was so high, but from the grief that you were experiencing, it was lower. Can you talk a little bit about that and the attacks you were going through?
Yeah, in the book I put David Hawkins' map of consciousness, and it talks about where grief is on the frequency scale, and grief is all the way at the bottom. Most people, you want to be about 500 or 600, joy, peace, love, enlightenment, all up there. And as a spiritual being and being a healer, I need to keep my frequency very high for the work that I do. So, being that person, I would always do my spiritual work. I never could have any attacks because my frequency was so high. And then when Anthony passed, because my frequency was so low, it was so easy for them to enter. I was attacked psychically. I was attacked in my dreams. I could hear them laughing at me and taunting me and telling me, jump in front of that car. You could be with your son right now. And so it got very overwhelming for me, and I could not fight it on my own. He would come in and he would enter my body at that point because my frequency was so low. He would enter my body and he would do healing and he would raise my frequency. But and he would help protect me that way, but he would tell me again that, I needed to fight this. I needed to get through this physical pain that I was experiencing in order for me to be who I was going to become through this journey.
So I know he mentions, like you just said, he mentioned that I can't take your life lessons away from you. I can only help so much. How did you change your frequency? And can you give it, because there's, I mean, well, let's face it, there's a lot going on in the world right now that can lower people's frequency. And how did you start to raise your frequency to basically get rid of these entities and so they can't attack you anymore?
Well, there was a couple of things. I couldn't do it alone. I was at that point, it was only about a month in, and I was still so grief-stricken. I would be screaming and yelling that I couldn't stay here. I can't do this without you. And he'd enter my body, and I'd be filled with this overwhelming love and peace. And so that way he would help raise my frequency. But I also have amazing soul sisters. I brought Organite. I don't know if you're familiar with Organite. Into my bedroom. I have a huge Organite pyramid under my bed in our room. I have gridded it in Reiki energy. And so I have a lot of protection around me. And I have Anthony. And then I have my soul sisters who also put this massive shield of protection around me at that point.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of things. And I was thinking about that when I was reading through the book, because I was just like, there's a lot like going on, and even I'm even seeing normal spiritual people that do a lot of practice, and you can just tell they're in a dark place. And it's not that they're not good people, they're just going through a hard time right now. And, we can give them all the tools. It's nice to give them tools to help them, right? So.
Absolutely. The world is really in a lot of chaos. And it's interesting, though, because a lot of people that are spiritual that I know are in this very peaceful phase, and I'm in that included. I feel very peaceful. I've been staying in my light. He's been reminding me to stay in my light. I do self-energy healing on myself 3 times a day because the energy is so heavy, and I am such an empath that I pick up on that collective energy. So I've actually been very peaceful.
Yeah, you're I believe clairsentient like me, so it's that knowing. And I always say that's not, everybody always says, well, that's great. I'm like, it's not always the greatest. So let's talk about what are other ways that, like, obviously you probably hear Anthony audibly, but what are some other ways that he communicates with you?
I do hear him. If it's very imperative that I hear him, I may hear him outside of my body. Most times it's telepathically. I can hear him in my head. He's also left many signs. He leaves me hearts everywhere. And he also reaches out to everybody that's open in my community that I am friends with or that I work with. Bringing messages again that he is still very much alive where he is. He's doing his work, and so he shares. He can come through electronics. He's turned lights on. He's turned the fire alarm on when I was under a deep, dark attack one night, and my husband and I woke up, and all the alarms in the house were blaring as if there was a fire. And we looked for 5 minutes. There was no fire, no smoke. I finally composed myself, laid back down, and I said, "Was that you?" And he said, "Yes, I did that to protect you." So he's able to come in like that if I need him, even when I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, always looking out for you, always protecting you, that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting how they do that. And sometimes it's incognito because they don't want you to know that they're there. So, but it's a good feeling. So
it is knowing you're protected through this process of grief. I mean, losing a parent. I'm very fortunate. My parents are still here. They're 71. But losing a child too, that's a very deep connection. And, going through this process, when I started writing the book, it was very cathartic for me to get those feelings out and to sort of try to see the big picture is what he kept telling me. He wanted me to see the big picture of all this. And that was part of that process of writing the book.
Well, yeah, I'm sure writing the book was very healing too. Getting all that stuff out and the emotions and what you were experiencing and stuff like that. I imagine that would be very healing. Yes. So your son actually told you when he was very young that he chose you as a mother. And so do you think that this was not only a contract of him being your son, but also this experience of him transitioning so young? And because he was in his 20s, am I correct?
He had just turned 27.
Wow.
So for him, it was a cycle of completion. He told me, 2 and 7 is 9. 9 is the completion of cycles. He's a very old soul. He's done this thousands of times, numerous times. And so from what he's shown me, I do past life regression too. And I did a past life regression on myself with him. And I was his wife, and he had watched me die. So part of this, you can't argue with him because he's so smart, and he's like, well, not only was it, not only did you agree to it, but it was your idea.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, well, you can't argue with that, and I'm sure that I wanted to experience that on a soul level when my soul contracted that with him, for him to come in as my child and leave at such an early age. And then at the time that we're going into now, I mean, with things that are going on in the world, I mean, he told me right after he passed, and I didn't understand it at that time, but within a year, the world would be a very different place than I knew than when he passed, and that many people would follow him. And at that point, I had not understood, what the vastness of what was going to be occurring in the world that we're going through right now.
Yeah, that's interesting that it was, he transitioned at 27, which is a 9. And then in 2019, which was July of 2019, and now we're in such an interesting time. I mean, it's a time that I would have never thought we would ever experience the things that we're experiencing. But, now you're here with all this information and all this energy from your son and the experience you have, and you can help, raise the frequency of the planet. And I think that's pretty amazing.
It truly was the perfect timing. We could not, what he's told me, from meeting with him, is that we've not gotten this far in the lifetimes that we've had before, but we've gotten this far now because of the work that I've done prior to him passing, because of how the world has ascended, how many people are beginning to awaken. We've been able to get further than we've ever gotten in any other lifetime together.
Yeah, that's pretty extraordinary. So obviously you guys contracted together to come in together, but then I guess one of the things, this is not necessarily in the book, but I want to talk about how there's a lot of parents out there that have lost their children, and I could talk a lot about people losing their parents, but I've never been a parent, so I don't know the experience, but I do know I have friends that have lost children, and the grief that they go through is just tremendous. I don't want to minimize anybody else's grief, but I have a really close friend that she lost her child when he was 22, and she was a past life therapist as well. Mm-hmm. And then her son was actually reborn as her grandson, and so. But she still goes through the pain of losing her son. And do you have any type of things that you could say, that would help parents out there that have lost their children, or really anybody? But I guess because we're talking about your son,
right? The parent-child connection is very, very strong. Just because they're not in the physical does not mean that you're not any longer connected. You have that bond through lifetimes, and it's still very prevalent. What he's shared with people is for me to give them hope that after, your child or your loved one does pass, that they are very much available for you. They want to communicate with you. They want nothing more than to help you through your grief, but they cannot, intervene if it would make you upset, or if it would turn you into a babbling fool. They don't want to hurt you in any way. So if you have a lot of grief, it's very important to start healing that grief. And it doesn't mean you don't love your child. When I meet with him, I still cry every day. I still mourn the loss of my son. My son is my son. He will always be my son in this lifetime. And having him in spirit doesn't compensate for that loss, but it does make it a little bit easier to share that with other people to give them hope.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's in store for you and Anthony in your journey now going forward? I mean, do you know what the experience is what's coming down the pike, I guess, so to speak, for you
Yeah,
guys?
you know, he describes it, he shares like it's almost like food, like you have to digest bits and pieces of it. He can't share the whole big, you know, meal with me at one time. It would be too overwhelming. So he shares like bits and pieces like food that you need to digest. So because I am a quantum healer, I work in many, many dimensions. I've always been, it's very natural for me to be out of my body a lot. Even as a child, I would, you know, travel to other dimensions and astral travel in my sleep. And I've had crazy, crazy experiences. But, you know, going forward, the next book is coming out. You know, I'm just starting to write it. There's a lot coming down the pike about us having the ability through our DNA to be able to heal ourselves. And so he brought in this world-renowned physicist, Dr. Sidney Brenner, one night, and I was blown away. I was like, how is this possible? I don't even know anything about physics. I'm very intuitive. I don't use that side of my brain. And I went and I looked up Dr. Sidney Brenner on the internet, and lo and behold, up pops Dr. Brenner, who is a world-renowned physicist, a Nobel Peace Prize winner for his work with DNA.
Oh, wow.
And
Well,
so I was like, holy shit.
You know, and I've not, that's, but like, you're not the first person to say that. That's come to me in channeling, and also to a lot of other people, that we're going to be able to heal ourselves through our DNA. And how do you think that works? Because I've always felt like it was through frequency.
It is, I feel like it's through frequencies, but I also feel like it's through a lot of visualization. Like when, you know, when we do theta healing, creators doing that healing and creators going in. And so actually when I do work that I do, almost like a psychic surgeon, I visualize, you know, that body part changing and recreating itself. And I truly believe, I mean, I've seen it in my own life and my clients that, you know, our thoughts create our reality. You know, the more that you are negative about your illness or how you're going to die because your mother died at this age and all this stuff, you know, you're creating that reality as you go forward. And there really is no past, present, or future, where it's all at once happening right now, right? So I do believe that through frequencies, through visualization, we're going to be able to sort of change that DNA in us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've found, I don't know if through your work, I've found that there's these people think I'm crazy, but I find that there's these little voices in our body, not in our head, but in our body that, you know, let's say that there was an experience with you when you were 7 and something harmed you. That little girl is still, you know, has some emotion around that, especially if it hasn't been let go and the energy is stagnant. And so you talk to that energy or that little girl, and then she finally lets go, and you feel the shift in the energy of the body. And so that to me is part of the visualization that you're talking about, because you have to visualize that interaction with that little girl. And then the shift happens, and then the physical starts to realign itself and heal because the energy is moving correctly.
Yes, because we are very cellular, you know, based beings. And because we, you know, have other lifetimes, we carry that energy in our cellular memory. So, you know, it might not even be something in this lifetime that you're holding on to, and you have to, you know, go clear it from another lifetime too sometimes. And a lot of times what I've seen with clients is that it's a repetitive pattern. So if, you know, they were abused in this life, they may have abused someone else in another life, or they may have also still been abused. But they carry that energy because they haven't healed that energy.
Yeah. So how was your son in life? Because I know you mentioned that he was very kind and very giving in the book. How was he as your son, you know, and you know, growing up and that kind of stuff? How was he as a person?
Well, his nickname is Butters. So if you're familiar with South Park, Butters was on South Park, a character. Butters was very naive and had very strict parents. So in middle school and high school, that's why he got the name. My ex-husband and I were very strict, and But Anthony was far from naive. Um, he was usually always, I call him the ringleader, you know. He was a Gemini, so he always had those two brain parts of his brain that were fighting with one another. He was so articulate. You know, he would meet people at 3 years old, shake their hands, say, "Hi, Jeremy, my name is Anthony, nice to meet you." And I'd be like, "Who are you? You're nothing like your brothers. You know, your brothers are like, hey, you know."
So
But
very social. Yeah.
yeah, he always had a smile on his face. He always wanted to help people, and he really did. He went to college for communications and journalism. He was a DJ for a while. He wanted to always help people, and he wanted to write his own book. But I feel like, you know, I have some of his journals. I feel like he never really had the confidence to do that. He wanted to share his experience to help others, and so it came about that way. It just may not have been the way that he thought it came about.
That's really extraordinary. Well, I mean, yeah, it came about that way because he's writing through you, or
Mm-hmm.
with you, I guess. So you guys are co-writing together. So that's beautiful. Yeah. So so I guess what we're thinking about, I kind of want to just like I love when I have a healer on the show because
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much we can talk about because there's just so much going on in this world, and I think that I don't know. I'm just feeling guided to go in this direction. When
Okay.
it comes to everything that's going on in the world, especially with the virus and stuff like that, what do you think that people can do? Like everybody's like really scared right now. Well, not everybody. You know, I agree with you. I'm pretty much at peace, and so but I like to give people that are afraid some techniques and maybe things that they can help. You know, I mean, I would probably tell them to download what creator's perspective is, you know, thinking about the theta healing.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some things that you could give them, you know, based on your interactions with your son and what you would do with your clients that would help them in this time frame?
Definitely stay away from the fear. You know, I don't watch the news. I'm very sheltered in my life, and if somebody calls me, like my parents still watch the news every night, you know, from 5 to 7,
Yeah.
and they'll call and say stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it. You know, you've got to get away from that stuff, and you've got to start going within. This is really a time of slowdown for a lot of people. I mean, we've been a community of, you know, bigger, faster, better, and, you know, work, work, work. And so now a lot of people have a downtime to sort of go within, but they're like, oh my God, like, you know, I may lose my livelihood, my house, my job, my, you know, maybe my kids won't eat. So there's a lot of fear circulating around that. And I think it's really important for you, if you have a lot of fear, to look at where their fear is coming from, first of all. Understand that, you know, what's going on in the world does not, you know, yes, it's horrible, but it is necessary for the shift that we're going to be going through. And definitely, I would say start to begin to meditate and go within and start to, you know, do guided meditations and stuff like that, where you can be bringing frequencies in, like 528s, or doing some healing to bring you to that place of peace. Especially when you feel that chaos going on, you really need to be focused in your energy and go within.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like take the poison out of the equation and then start working on bringing all the good into your psyche, so to speak, or the light, you know, so to speak, and get into that higher frequency.
Yeah, stay focused on how many people have lived through the virus. You know, not if you're watching how many people die every day and you keep seeing that over and over and repetitive. I'll give you an example. Anthony was little when 9/11 happened. I think he was in third or fourth grade, but the news kept playing it over and over again. He said, "Oh my God, mommy, is this really happening again? Is it, you know, going on still?" And I said, "No, that's just the news playing that for you, so you can see like it's." So they're keeping you in that fear-based mentality. So if you can really get away from that, it's really important.
Yeah, also they're very, very beautiful. Hey, I want to go ahead and share. I put up your website here, but I also wanted to just kind of, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. And I was just going to show, hold on, let me pull it up here. I got it up on the screen. Um, I was just going to show your website, and this is one of them. I know you're gonna tell us about the other one, but this is your SedonaSoulSisters.com. And then I also pulled up your Facebook, so I'm just mainly pointing this out so everybody can go and check you out and get your social media up. And and then I know you mentioned you have another website as well that you wanted to talk about. What was the name of that site? I can't remember.
It's sassysoulhealing.com. And it's interesting because when I was guided to move to Sedona, I had a near-death experience back in 2017. And shortly after that, my life felt very choreographed to me. I was on this path then searching for this deeper understanding of where I was going. And I was guided to move to Sedona. And it was funny because my husband and I just built this big, beautiful, brand new house. And he was like, "Are you friggin' crazy?" And I was like, "We need to be there. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we need to do this, So we ended up selling our house coming up here. I was meditating. Are you familiar with the airport Mesa?
No.
In Sedona?
No.
Okay, so there's a vortex, the airport Mesa up there, and it's not far from where my office is. And I was meditating up there. What should I do? What should I be doing with my life? And I heard to go see Roz at Sedona Soul Sisters. And I was like, I don't even know who they were. I'm not going. I'm not doing this, So it took me about 2 weeks to call Roz and make an appointment. And I walked in and she's like, "Oh my God," she's like, "There's some connection here between the two of us. Your frequency is out of this world. How did you find me?" And I said, "Well, I was sitting on this mountain meditating and I was guided to you."
That's amazing. It sounds like Master Rusi there in some ways up on a mountaintop, right? So
yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, it's funny because I was going to be doing a retreat. I was looking at doing a retreat. I think out in Chocolate Tree is what somebody told me to do. And there was just something that told me not to do it. And then I was going to plan it right when the coronavirus started. And you know how that kind of happens. And so I didn't go to Sedona. And so, but I have a pull towards Taos really, really strongly. I was there in 2012. I just absolutely adore Taos, New Mexico. And so you never know. I might be out there and come and have coffee with you. So
yeah, you never know where the world's going to take you, right?
The universe is pretty strong. So we have probably about 6 or 7 more minutes. I just wanted to maybe throw out there to you, what are some things that you would like to give the listeners as far as tips and stuff like that, or any last advice or maybe that we didn't.
I would just say, now is a really important time to come together. I really feel, especially as a healer, when I meet someone, I look at their heart space, and I see their person, their soul on a soul level. So I see them at that space. I think if we could all come together as a collective and start seeing people on a soul level for who they truly are, not the person they portray on the outside, the person that they say they are, but that true person on the inside, I think our world will shift immensely. Don't you agree?
I totally agree. As a matter of fact, I just did a live feed last week on that exact subject. I was like, if we would stop talking about our individual perspectives and start coming together with our hearts, we would shift this planet. And we're so busy talking about our individual thing that we feel like we need to be heard about, and so as a result, everybody's talking and not enough action is happening, so to speak. And I feel like if we get into our heart space, well, first of all, that's our energy being balanced, right? So and then we would really start to see each other and we would hear each other. And I think right now we're hearing, and I don't know if you agree with this, I feel like the world, there's a whole bunch of people that are desperate to be heard, and they're not being heard because they're not even really listening to themselves, as you mentioned, that we're not going into our doing our inner journey, so to speak. And I have a friend that used to call it an inside job. She'd be like, "Jared, this is an inside job." What she was meaning is we have to get inside of ourselves,
right,
and start listening, and we're really not paying attention to ourselves. So
right.
maybe the ones doing the work on some level, But that's deep work. I mean, I imagine like going through your grief, you would hear this part of yourself just cry, even when you weren't crying on the outside, and desperate, to experience having your child back, and having
Yeah.
your son back here in the physical. So, but I totally relate to the whole moving. It kind of makes me chuckle because I would have probably been the same way your husband was. Are you kidding? We just built this house. What do you mean we're moving on the other side of the country? So,
Yeah, he's sort of learning to adjust to all of that. It's funny because COVID started, and he's very he's also a Gemini, very analytical. He needs like he needs to know where he's going. He needs to know the final destination. And with me, I sort of throw him all out of there, So
yeah, it's like I'm a Pisces, and I have one of my friends is a Taurus, and so I talk really, really fast. So like I have all these ideas, and she'll be like, "Bring it down, bring it down." I'm like, "What do you mean? That is down." It's really funny how we process these things. I just want to pull this up real quick before we end the show. The book, guys. I imagine you can find it on Amazon.
Amazon.
It's From Death to Life: The Incredible Story of Anthony Joseph by Terri-Ann Russell, our guest tonight. And I'm hoping that when her new book comes out, that she'll definitely be on the show again. And I'm really excited about the work that she's going to be doing with the world, her and her son, and the work that she's already done. And I'm sure she's helping a lot of people out there. But check out her website, sassysoulhealing.com, and also sedonasoulsisters.com. And I'm sure you'll be able to find her and her information out there as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me on. I'm sitting here in gratitude. I'm very blessed. I did not want to do anything today. And Anthony made sure that my whole schedule, I had clients all day, and then I had this show tonight.
He was like, "Come on, Mom, let's get it done."
Yeah, you got to do it. Stop fighting this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And everybody, as always, thanks for tuning in, and many blessings and much love.
Thank you.